Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear representatives of the diplomatic corps, dear journalists. I'm happy to welcome you here in the international news agency Россия сегодня press center. And as you know from the announcements, in the upcoming 7th BRICS summit, which is going to take place in the city of Ufa next July, a group of leading Russian researchers from universities and think tanks has prepared a report on the potential and strategic priorities of the BRICS rise. Today, the authors of that document will familiarize yourself with the major takeaways and ideas that have been pointed out in the report and recommendations that were given by the working team. We're going to cover the following questions during our meeting: the role and place of BRICS today, the rise of BRICS in the new geopolitical trend, the future of BRICS in the context of new world dynamics, strategic partnerships and developments of BRICS, and preparation of Russia for the 7th BRICS summit in the city of Ufa. I would like to introduce to you our press conference participants. President of the International Peter Rimster-Rocking, named after Nikolai Kondratyev, member of the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, Yuri Yakovets. General Director of the Institute for Economics Strategies, member of the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences Academy, Alexander Ageyev. Senior Research Fellow of the Moscow State University Moscow State University, member of International Member Academy of Sciences, Askar Akayev, and Director of the Latin American Institute, Associate Member of the Russian Academy of Sciences, Vladimir Davidov. And the last is our guest is Vice President of the think tank for strategic research, Sokol, member of the Presidium of the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, Mr. Kolin. Yuri Vladimirovich, I would like to give you the floor for you to, make an introduction, and then we will pass over to the questions. Okay? Thank you. So you all got that brochure. This is a shortened version of that report. The report itself is 400 pages. It is being printed now, and it's going to take 10 to 12 days to deliver it to you. So basically, this is a pretty non-standard report in terms of it was done within a very short period of time, within 3 months' time, by a big writing team, 330 people from 9 research institutes and 6 universities. And we were able to deliver it in a very short period of time. Why? Because we took people who knew this stuff, who are real leading experts in the field, who have already published several papers, and who could provide this input for this effort. And we have assembled it together, and we hope that the synergy will be there from the scientific and non-scientific points of view. This report is not only a teamwork, is not only a collection of ideas, but it is also different because it has, some sections have been made as a breakthrough. So we went to the new heights. There are 5 things like this, and then the other authors will follow up. The first and main section and takeaway from our work it was unexpected for me and for the others. It turned out that when we were listening and analyzing the trends, the latest dynamics according to the World Bank data, it turned out that the BRICS group and the G7, BRICS as 5 rising countries and G7 is the mature countries, they're in different historical ages, and this is no wonder that the press release is called BRICS and G7 are in different historical times. It means that we live during the historical gap or fault. This is 50 years of time. The first 25 years of this century is a period when several cycles change over, cycles of civilizations. A 200-year civilization that appeared on the basis of the industrial age and revolution is going down now. It is destined, and it is going down, I would say, and it is a downgrading trend in our society. But BRICS countries, 5 rising nations, are on the upgoing wave for a new civilization cycle for 200 years and new Kondrativ cycles. So the 5th Kondrativ cycle is coming over. Is about to end, and the 6th cycle is going to start. And the picture is that there is a very unexpected new global watershed. And this June we had a special Forum of Civilizations, and there was a new report about new watershed and BRICS potential. And future research of that forum brought about the following conclusions. BRICS, the second point about BRICS is that it is not just a standard, useful international cooperation, because it used to be world empires, political empires, military and political ones, economic unions, but this unification is a new generation one. A generation which is a new civilization unit. It's not about only politics or economy, but about the values, systems of values. They're different. And it's no wonder that Vladimir Putin points that out all the time. And it is not based on the domination principle. The domination period is about to end. And it is based on the dialogue and partnerships between civilizations, generations, leaders of the state and social strata. So it is a real new thing which has the future. And in this century will feature such unions which are going to be the most potential. The third takeaway is that the BRICS Foundation has another important thing. It's not just BRIC which was came suddenly to play, but we made a conclusion that it is underpinned by deeper historical laws. First of all, this is the historical pendulum law. Within thousands of years, the historical pendulum, the center of civilizational progress, would come from the north of equator in the greater historical rivers, then came to the Mediterranean, then came to the Orient, and during 5 years of time it went to the to the west, and the Western countries dominated the mid-20th century. But 50 years ago, as Peter M. Sorokin has said, the major trend of our time that we would have in the future the shift of the creational activity eastward, and which is taking place today. The second historical law that I have mentioned is the cycle changing time. The civilization cycles change, the Kondrativ cycles change, and a bigger accumulation period is going over to Asia. And again, there is a law of polarity or polarization. I've made it in 2012. Polarization in social and political partnerships between the states, social generations in critical situations, and we are facing it now. So these things are not have not happened by chance, and they have their potential. The fourth point is that the forecast made by Oskar Akayev and his team, the long-term forecast based on global models, it convincingly showed that the shift which is taking place today is not happening by chance, and there is a eastward shift already made. I've analyzed the World Bank data for the 90s and since the year 2000 until 2012, and it turned out that if we take average developed countries, 5 billion people, and 70% of population, and BRICS are leading those that part of the world. And if we compare it with high revenue countries, golden billion, 1.3 billion people, 18% of population. So the gap between the GDP growth over that period of time in the 90s was 1.65 times, and over the last 12 years the gap is 3.5 times. But if we count by national domestic product, which is more real, the gap is 3.8, and this is not happening by chance. So if we take the statistical data, the gap was 1.6, but it's all about material and non-material values. But over the last 12 years, the gap was 14 times, and China is on the one side of that pole, which grew by factor 13.2. Japan is minus 1.5%, and 0 in the United States. Not just the momentum of growth, but if you can look at this distribution structure of the national wealth, the picture is that the average development countries has 32%, and high income countries, golden billion, is only 20%. So the maximum achieved data is in China from 35 to 49%, but this is too much of accumulation, and the Communist Party of China is trying now to polarize it more. But on the other side, the UK is only having 15%, used to be 22. So we can see that the future foundation is when we have to renew the fixed capital based on the sixth technology mode. The countries are eating away their future, and it means that they are rested on that foundation. They have lots of bubbles, and if back in 2007 the correlation between the market capitalization of the firms to national income to the world's global GDP was 121%, it was 59% in 2009. So it's dozens of trillions of dollars of collapse of those bubbles, and that bubble economy has no future. It is a parasitic economy. So now we can see that the changes. And another thing which came to my mind 2 years ago, and it was published based on the World Bank data, International Monetary Fund. In 2014, G7 of developed countries plus Indonesia, 5 plus Indonesia, and they came, the purchasing power parity, real economy, they had the same level, and China overpaced the United States. So not in the 30s, but this year, the GDP and purchasing power parity is we're having China in the first place, and we're having the the representatives from the Chinese embassy here. So our congratulations on that record. So it has been awaited for a long time, and the American printed press has confirmed it. And that that research that I did is not a coincidence, and this is longer term thing. And there was a book published by the Moscow universities, the program until the year 2050. It's a long-term trend, and I would say that the golden billion countries came to a democratic trap because they vote for democracy, but during democracy the strategic issues have to be resolved by the majority. And here the 18% they're having now, and they're going to have even less, about 15 or 14%. And average development countries, 70 or 80%, 43% account for BRICS, and it's going to be 80% in the 50s, in 2050. And if we take one village, who should take decisions if they live in the single village? So I think that explains the drop of the economic and demography, because it explains that huge activities that the United States and multinationals are now trying to achieve, because they feel that they're useless, and they try to change this shift of forces, and they don't want to say goodbye to it. And this is the fourth point. And the fifth one is that there's a great historical mission is vested in BRICS, because BRICS is becoming the vanguard of the mankind at the new stage of historical development. But for it to get it done, we need to have a system of strategic priorities. And using the Fortaleza Declaration, which was adopted in Brazil, it turns out that the Russian strategic proposals are going to be considered in UFA next year in July. So we need to have strategic priorities, and as scientists we have pointed out that strategic priorities. The first thing is that we're happy about our success, but we need to understand that the environment is changing. The extensive growth sources are left behind. We need to go for the intensive source of growth. The science and technology revolution is coming over, is being developed, and the sixth mode is coming over. And if China has made a huge and a wonder breakthrough, their number of research fellows grew by 10%. By factor 20, the number of patents or applications for inventions have increased over a 12 period of time, which is 30% of the world level, 26% of high-tech experts. So what else is good for me to know? There were 18 roadmaps developed. The Axel Springer publishing house has published it until 2050, as we did in the Soviet times. In China, they're doing the same breakthrough now. So I believe that we need to shift to that new. But the India situation is very serious, because they're lagging behind seriously. Negative factors. We had a degradation of the scientific potential in Russia versus 20 years ago, and it's going on, unfortunately. We can see what's going on with the Academy of Sciences. The same is true for South Africa, maybe due to the brain drain, so very low scientific potential metrics. So we need to focus. This is the focal point to shift to the intensive sources of growth. We need to do it. The second strategic priority is that BRICS countries have huge energy resources. We need a slightly positive balance in terms of export and import of energy, but we need to foster this, and it has been mentioned by Mr. Putin in Brazil. Another issue is food supply. We have analyzed that the situation and the resources are there, and the employment level is higher than the average, but the production level is very low of the agriculture, I mean. And this agri-food problem is there, and lots of imports. Now it's changing in Russia, which is a very noteworthy thing. This is number 3. And the next strategic direction is related to the humanities, humanitarian cooperation. We need to raise educational level, scientific work, and the literacy, but it's not just about this. The point is that the knowledge that the youngsters get today, we have 70 million youngsters jobless in the world, and we need to give them the data, the knowledge. It should be a fundamental educational system, not to waste our heritage. It should be filled up with some creative things and innovations. It should be uninterrupted. So education over the entire life. We have the richest culture, the culture which is equal to BRICS countries, Russia and China and Brazil and India and South Africa. I've visited all those countries and I've seen it in museums. There's the highest level of culture, but it's very important to expel the attempts to kill that cultural heritage, for the new generation to lose this. Dozens and thousands of our predecessors should preserve it, and this is a very important task. The next priority is institutionalization. So we need to... This union should be real, high scale, not just to get together once in a year, but they have to be based on a good scientific base, which is also very important. And this is key to resolution of those serious issues. And it's very good that the expert council is there. We're going to make this brain and thinking center of that thing, and we hope for the future cooperation. So the institutionalization is required. And what is next and last? We have to speak together with other international organizations, and G20 in Brisbane featured the BRICS mingle in the beginning, because we had to align our positions between leaders of China, South Africa, and other BRICS countries. We have solidarity, and we need to increase our influence, because the West is trying to oppose it, because it got used to domination, and these new trends are very hard for them to absorb. And this is not our first report. We did the same in 2002 when we met in Johannesburg, and twice in the UN headquarters. We also had such report at 3 or plus 20 plus, but politicians don't hear us much. They don't welcome scientists, but the situation has changed now, and for us to change it, we need to use our friends, and they have to represent us abroad, and we need to make a good scientific base for the future strategic decisions, which will take place in Ufa next year. It's not going to be just the BRICS summit, it's going to be the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit, and one without each other. If those two things go side by side, it's going to be a very good positive thing for the world trends. Thank you, Yuri. The first question is the role of BRICS, but Yuri Vladimirovich has covered this question so well. But Vladimir, what do you think? Do you have anything to add? Well, not very much, I would say. But I would try to perform a certain function. I'm going to be based on the fact that Yuri has said a synergy effect. I think that synergy is there not just in terms of among Russian scientists who have made this joint report. It is in the subject of the study. Another thing which is we have to confess is that BRICS is a new thing on the world arena. BRICS is a search. It is a it's going to take some years until Yuri has mentioned institutionalization, the political will in all countries, in all member states, to find the most adequate formula and model on how to organize cooperation between the 5 countries. But not only those 5. Yuri Vladimirovich has mentioned some special nature of BRICS because it represents 5 biggest civilization areas, and of course this moral right grows, and its significant growth to reshift the existing global regulational system. It's not just 5 countries, not 5 states, it's not just 5 bigger or extra big economies. It is 5 leading civilization areas ascending or rising. We hope that they are rising until, BRICS is a big irritator in terms of ideology, in terms of intelligence and politics. I would mention the recent Economist issue, reflecting certain collective West moods, I would say, and there is an article from the October issue describing the current situation in Brazil and Russia, saying that we're losing momentum. We got used to, argue with our colleagues who at first have some doubts, and they were very skeptical about BRICS initially, saying that those countries are very different, they're not compatible. So one country would not allow to participate, or the other. China was authoritative in Russia, but China is dynamic. But Russia is losing momentum. Has not found its. Brazil has not found its place. We don't have this so-called geographical bonus and so on. So I think that the Western critics are self-contradictory, because they're now saying that BRICS is having the joint crisis, the average age crisis or something, but they want to say that it's not possible to say about synchronous nature of this in terms of what? In the synchronous of events. When before you were telling about the differences about models and civilization types and so on, but we want to say first point is that it's not just it's not a rejection of the possibility of future cooperation. It's just a prerequisite of cooperation for the countries. Our difference is that the Western experts, including O'Neill Group in Goldman Sachs, which has been mentioned by Yuri Vladimirovich, they would consider this new union as a subject of action. Our basic position initially from our working team, who began this work in 2004, we were using it as new objects for international relations to renew the global regulation system. This is our basic feature and standpoint, and difference from the Western scientists. I think that we have to being convinced into good dynamics of that team, new centers of the world economy and politics, we need to understand that, and we're having now the representatives from high-profile institutes for longer-term forecasts. Those guys are experts in the longer-term prognosis, and they think globally. And what is happening today in Brazil and in Russia, and they're trying to rename it not emerging countries but sub-emerging countries. So they're trying to call Brazil and Russia today. This is a search for a new model of development. The challenges for Russia and Brazil today, China, I believe, has already found the proper way to respond to that challenge since the 18th session of the Chinese Communist Party, because at that time they have reconsidered those priorities and they're now being worked on. And we're having our colleague Mr. Ostrovsky, who could speak better about this, and our Chinese representative as well, the Embassy of China. So I think that within the framework of in BRICS, it's very important to ensure such cooperation that would foster the correct selection of the developmental strategy in all member states, because we need to share this developmental strategy, and it should not be done individually today. It should be done on the shared basis. It's very good that an intensive dialogue is being conducted. It's very good that we have a good opinion share process. Sometimes it looks like we consider this is a problem too broad, but it's good. It means that the BRICS is working. It's time to consolidate things. It's time to consolidate over the key projects that are really key for the strategic, for all strategic members, that we have to focus on. I was very much satisfied when there was a shift in the establishment of the new developmental bank, when the question was further resolved for the reserve currencies, and there are quite a few projects that we have to consolidate around, including energy cooperation and policy. So I'm nearly done, and I've got a lot of passion for BRICS. I would speak longer, but my colleagues have to speak up as well. So thank you very much. Thank you, Vladimir Mikhailovich. Thank you very much. So the previous speakers have made a conclusion about the future. So what do you think, dear friends? The group of scientists from Russian universities and Russian Academy of Sciences on a interdisciplinary foundation, economists, mathematicians, political sciences, and we have been gathered under the auspices of the great Russian mathematician Viktor Sadovnichiy. We have been dealing with the computer simulation of the longer-term forecasting of the BRICS countries' development. So he said that we have to get it done by the next UFA summit to prepare a longer-term forecast on where the world is going, on where BRICS countries are moving to. And we have published a monography headed by Mr. Sadovnichiy. He is #1 mathematician in Russia. So the results of the integrated modeling of BRICS countries, which is important because Vladimir Mikhailovich has fairly good mentioned that there is a propaganda that the first 10 years were a 10-year of BRICS countries. They overcome the global economic crisis well, but their future is bizarre and maybe even sad. So the loss of momentum of development has not been mentioned by chance, and BRICS countries will cease to exist as a political and economical force of the future. So the simulation has been done for major things: demography, accumulation of human and physical capital, but the most important thing, the technology progress, because the 21st century developments of avant-garde countries will be in the focus of attention and will be described by the science and technology progress of the coming technology revolution. So all those parameters were witnessed by the fact that the BRICS countries will not only retain their momentum in terms of development, but will regain those success, and by the year 2030 will become the leading political force and economic locomotive of the international developments, and there is no alternative to it. And we have considered quite a few scenarios, not only favorable ones for BRICS nations, because I'm not sure that West, headed by the United States of America, will provide good conditions for that. They will do the utmost to stop that dynamics for the BRICS countries, but they will not achieve success in this. We have considered different traps. The average income trap, because you know about this. Not very many countries have passed it successfully. Only 7 countries in the 20th century have been able to pass it through. It's Japan, not the biggest one. Japan is the biggest, South Korea. But the rest are Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong are smaller. So it's a very hard transition from average to high income per capita to become a developed country. So we have considered this first trap. The trap related to the possible deficit of investment of technology and savings. And the third point, which is important, is the trap related to the unevenness of income distribution in all avant-garde nations in the world, both in the East and in the West, in the developing countries. A huge social polarization, which is not affordable. It should not be done, and there is a big gap between the incomes, which is going to be the major break for the development. But we can see that BRICS countries are overcoming this successfully, and by the year 2050, they will become the leading world geopolitical force, and with unsurpassed economy. I've been participating for many years in such convergence discussions. It's clear that the convergence is going on, but the question is, will the great convergence come to play? 250 years ago, in the middle of the 18th century, there was a great divergence. The Industrial Revolution made it possible for the West to be head and shoulders with the rest of the world, and to achieve a great divergence that lasted until World War II. But after the war, there were conditions for convergence, and it was not very stable, I would say. But in the early 2000s, it skyrocketed due to the stable rise of China and India, I would say, which is no coincidence, as Yuri Vladimirovich has mentioned, for geopolitical things. So the pendulum of history went from the west to east. There is no doubt about it. I've just published a book, and I confirm that by the year 2050, there will be a great convergence. What it means, the wheel of history will make a full circle since 1750, and the world will return to the same condition at the new helix stage, and the consumption of services and goods will be there in Southeast Asia, China, India, and other countries. No matter do we want it or not, that's irritating, but this is what will happen, and this is no coincidence. This is a great convergence. Let's watch China. In 10 years' time, China will become, a leader, an ultimate leader in all respects, and will achieve high average income, and he will try to go for higher income, because it's possible in China. They're now having a science and technology breakthrough, which will allow them to win in this battle, and by the middle of the 30s, China is going to become the country with the average income and high developed country, because those guys are having 1.5 billion people, and by definition they cannot achieve the same income per capita as in the West, but they don't need it basically, because we know that Confucius and Buddha knowledge and science values make it possible to live at average income in a good way, and fairly so. And we can make a conclusion that BRICS is a new center of a just and fair world order in the 21st century. The balance of forces in our modeling showed that the balance of forces is going to grow towards BRICS nations. G7, as far as economy is concerned, is going to be overtaken by BRICS nations. Again, purchasing power parity, and in 10 years by absolute nominal values. And what's next? They're going to change within G20 or modernization of the world government. I don't know, but BRICS nations will set up conditions for fair globalization with a human face, which was a dream of IMF ex-CEO Mr. Dominic Strauss-Kahn, and who had paid a big price for that. But we do hope that the BRICS countries will come to a better world order. They will foster to a more fair and harmonic globalization in the world. So by the year 2050, the forecast is that there will be a more comfortable life in the world, and less aggression, less wars in the world, and soft force will dominate due to BRICS countries, not hard force overthrows or wars that are visible today and made by the West. The West will continue doing so, because this is a fight for leadership, but by 2025, the West and G7 will completely lose, according to all models, simulations, and scenarios. They will lose this war. So I want to say this, and I believe that BRICS is the future. BRICS is the fair world order, and BRICS is a harmonization and globalization, and the best future for the entire world. Thank you. Alexander Ivanovich, the floor is yours. What do you see the strategic priorities for BRICS in the report? Well, my colleagues have outlined the major things, but I would like just to specify some things. Well, if shortly we formulate the new priorities for the strategy is to make a new model for their countries and to restore a fair correlation between the forces and benefits in the world economy. This is the gap. The gap is that it means that the model is not there, and it means that we don't have this fair correlation of forces, resources, and all that stuff. What is fair? Fairness. Fairness is a definition of the fact that the share of countries who world in the world demographic situation, in economy, in science and technology development, military, civilization, or cultural, and the role of countries in how to select, to make a choice, how to take decisions, how to develop further. It is all distributed more or less evenly. It means fairness, based on the historical understanding. If it goes wrong, I mean this correlation, historical, civilization, or geographic, then the world order begins to make sparks. And we have a longer-term pendulum, which began in the mid-18th century, was well manifested in the 19th and the 20th century, and the historical motion will be finalized in the 21st century. But what else is worth mentioning is that it's not just an optimistic scenario, which everybody is working, and as Karakayevich has mentioned, we need to mention a black swan scenario if there is no world war, which is very important. What is the point about this pendulum, and what is the model that has to be changed? Before the Napoleonic Wars, China accounted for 30% of the world GDP, but by 1950, China accounted for 4% only. It's a huge downgrade in the whole world economy. The United States, when the German troops have captured Paris in 1881, the United States accounted for 2% of the world economy only. So what's happened over the next dozens of years to change it? 70 to 30. So the southern countries, as not only medicine by Mr. Ostrovsky has mentioned, the south countries accounted for 70% and north and west only 30. But by 1950 it went upside down. That pragmatically meant the fact that it was another model used, the injustice or unjust model of distribution. And that model, which is still dominating, there are beneficiaries and victims, those who have bigger, losses, and those who benefit better and have more effects. And we can confirm it, and we witness it, and we try to make it more fair. And these are very concrete figures. The total assets of national wealth of BRICS countries is $1.5 quadrillion, and the same amount is the national wealth of the West. It's pretty much the same. And what is the most important is that if it's since 2008 and it grew to the trend in 2014, the efforts are now 50-50, and this is this tension that comes from. And we can not only resolve it due to harmonic development, we can also resolve it rudely, as it was the case within the entire 19th and 20th century, during the entire colonization policy. What is the colonization policy? It means extra beneficial and extra marginable things like Vasco da Gama visit using 2 ships. One returned to India, gave 80,000% of return on investment. It means that somebody loses, somebody finds. And this is not an abstract question, it's a very specific question. On the Geneva conference in 1922, when the World after War I was resolved, Russia was given claims against nationalization of foreign companies. 18 billion golden rubles was 2 to 3 GDPs, so $10 billion, which was very serious. And it looked like it was not possible to resolve all those things without longer reparations and payments. But the Russian government, the then Soviet government, has claimed back another suit, $39 billion, and it ended with a Geneva Agreement, and the cooperation between Germany and Russia and the United States. But again, where those $20 billion come to? Somebody has acquired them. So if we take a situation of India, which was a colony until 1947, and China, torn by war since 1931 and earlier, and if we look at Brazil, we can see the same situation. Somebody turned those territories into the, victimized territories. There were losses and conflicts between certain countries because it's all about what is the main model in the world economy today. It means that this is unjust distribution of such things that brings about exploitation of resources, and the loan and speculative model is being developed it's developing on a regular basis based on those bubbles, which is a tool, and the default is a tool for many countries now to clean the balance sheets of banks. So those toxins accumulate quite fast. If we remember 20s, 30s, the 70s, and so on. And this is a very hard thing. And the ways to write off and correlate those balances, which are too big. The war is the tool to do so. The First World War began in December 1917 when sanctions were declared against Russia, and we can see at Germany when after reparations it was in despair, the population. And the Cold War also ended in 1991, but who could tell you that those hotspots are not phantoms of the new Cold War? Maybe it's going on. Maybe it's just faded away for a while, but it means that the war is a good tool of that world order. What is the beneficiary status in the world? Of course, it's military superiority. Of course, the science and technology development. Who is the first to have technology will have an intellectual margin from it. So 98% of the intellectual property is shared by a certain circle of beneficiaries, and we're not among them. And then the right of beneficiaries bases on the right to set up the rules of the game in the world economy, and it is a superiority between the leading international organizations like World Bank. So it's a very specific thing, and basically the financial superiority. What is the foundation of the victim? The victim is weak itself. The victim has a spoiled paradigm, and we need to pay for that disproportionately. And we have to pay using your own wealth for that. So the strategy, which is the victim strategy, are secondary ones. They acquire institutions and they have the secondary dream, I would say, because the nation's energy are only awakened when there are goals that are supreme, and if it's mimicking or if it's secondary, it does not give this impetus. Again, the victimization means there is no dream. And finally, what is the takeaway? The conclusion is that the strategic development priorities to have a new model based not on the bubbles but on the harmony, a fair distribution of forces, assets, possibilities and developments. It means very practical consequences. First, the first priority of BRICS countries and the whole of the world, not to unleash a new war. And the major priority is to let that scenario go on that has been mentioned by Skarakayev, to have a correlation of forces towards the more fair and just world order. The BRICS countries' priority is to make a breakthrough in science and technology development, because many things are now based on monopolization of such resources in the other world. And such resources like designers, scientists have to be grown here. We have to restore the elder scientific model. We need to build new things using cooperation. We have lots of brain in China, India, and South Africa and other countries. The third principal priority is physical capacity. So BRICS countries should show their physical efficiency and legal capacity. And the most important thing is to evaluate correctly ourselves and different. If there is no truth in evaluating ourselves, if we let somebody else, rating agencies, to evaluate ourselves, is not good. What is China doing is very important. They use resources for self-identification, irrespective of someone else's evaluations, because they're not ours, and which is also very important to make a dream. To have a dream which is going not to be secondary, but it's going to be a very high dream, humanitarian and integral dream. And the last thing I want to mention is that one of the deficiencies in the modern world, as mentioned by Paul Krugman, Nobel Prize winner, is the deficit of understanding. If there is understanding, it's going to be good strategies, good instruments and tools, and good institutes and systems, and good results. So I believe that the report that has been presented today is a very major step to overcome this deficit. Thank you. Thank you, Alexander Ivanovich. Konstantin Konstantinovich, would you like to add something? Yes, please. Dear colleagues, I represent a think tank of strategic research as a new organization dealing with the global and national security, humanitarian aspects for the major part. So I'm a scientific chief research officer of that think tank, and we are on the same page in terms of what I heard today, but I would like to point out 3 points which have not been well represented here. They are in the report, but what is meant by this? The feature of that report is its integration nature. Apart from civilization, economic analysis and other things and forecasts, there are humanitarian issues mentioned here, as well as the information development and issues related to opposing global threats that today has nobody cancelled. When preparing this report, we were based on the fact that the BRICS summit will be the most important geopolitical event in 2015. In 2014, this event was Mr. Putin's speech on the Valdai Forum called New World Order, New Rules, or The Game Without Rules. The experts has evaluated it as a keynote event, which means the end of the single polarity world and US domination. Of course, this speech will result in the stronger information influence on Russia and BRICS nations, that pressure will grow. And from the technical viewpoint, this is cyber security. The number of cyber attacks grew by several orders of magnitude, I would say. And this is the influence on the mechanisms that have been set in BRICS countries. And the report has a certain section dedicated to the information security of BRICS countries. What is meant by that? This is electronic payment systems, automated banking system, the space-based navigation and communication systems, social networks, and finally manufacturing of information and communications technology, which is the baseline and the major catalyst of the modern society development, as well as the source of that integrated technology, nano, bio, and cognitive ones that will form the basis and the drive of the sixth technology mode. I would like to point out and attract your attention to the fact that apart from such practical things, there is a new growing understanding of for national issues, for global security, and information part is taking more and more place, and we need to understand that this soft power technology, which have been represented clearly over the last period of time, which is quite an important tool, which we have to be able to use properly, and we have to pay attention to this. The second point is global issues, global problems. 1 year ago, there was the World Forum Global Civilizations. Last December, we had it in the building of the Russian Academy of Sciences Presidium, and there was an address to the United Nations and governments of many countries in the world in order to attract their attention to the global issues that are growing today: food security, ecology, social disintegration, as well as the threat from the space, which are becoming real, and of course the systemic cultural crisis, which is observed by us in many countries, and first of all in the Western nations. To do so, we need to have a multi-faceted cooperation, and as BRICS countries are united by more than 40% of the global population, the cooperation along these lines will contribute to the resolution of many modern problems. What lines of development do we have to go along? First of all, these are cultural things. We have to discuss those cultural values that unite our countries and are opposed to that cultural values which are not good for our planet. This cooperation is not against somebody. This is cooperation to retain civilizations, to leave the earth for our successors, for them to exist on it and successfully live. First is the mindset, attitude of a human being to the other human beings and to nature. The mindset. The second thing is global research. Today, Russia is leading the way. Oskar Akayevich has already said about this, but I want to just add that for more than 8 years now in the Moscow Humanitarian University, there is a department of global processes, and it holds World Fora on this. And there is a new Academy of Global Research, which is going to employ and attract researchers and scientists to resolve those things. And it's going to be good to establish the branches of this academy in the BRICS countries, and that will foster the advance of those countries towards the resolution of the global issues. The second point is training of elite and leaders who will be decision makers today. I've just returned from China. We have spent a week visiting two higher party school in Shanghai and Tianjin, and we have seen how Chinese colleagues work on this. They do it very persistently. They invest a lot. They make an infrastructure, and they make, of course, party leaders first, but it's the point is that we need to act local, but we need to think global. We need to look forward because the space is shrinking, and those things in terms of ecology and environment are very alarming. But today our society is very political, I would say. What we can see on TV, Ukraine, for FX rate for US dollar and oil price. Of course it's important, but there are other things, and it's very good that they were pointed out in that report and will be discussed on the upcoming BRICS summit next year. And the last thing I would like to mention is the expansion of cooperation at the societal level. I mean the so-called cultural diplomacy. We should not wait for our politicians to do everything. The great public, the common people should also think towards the interests of the BRICS countries' development. Thank you for your attention. Yuri Vladimirovich, what would you say in terms of the summit preparation? What do you think? Yes, thank you. There is another specifics of BRICS that makes it different from the other thing, because BRICS is based on science. Because if a politician goes too far from science, it becomes too nearsighted and erroneous, I would say, and we can see it now. So from the very beginning, BRICS was established to so every summit, before every summit, there are some academic meetings, I would say, and when the last summit took place in Brazil, there is a national committee for BRICS research, which is headed here by Mr. Vyacheslav Nikonov. He has published 2 papers, and my neighbor has published a book, BRICS in Latin America, Positioning and Cooperation. Vladimir Putin has taken a look at this book, and he was happy. And he even he has written an essay for that. And this mingle between science and technology is very important, and it's going to be the highlight of the next summit. We're supported by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia. Minister Lavrov is watching closely this thing, and our institute, together with Alexander Ivanovich, we are consulting, organizations for that process, and we do cooperate. So the first step is that it's very good that we begin with the development of the scientific base, because the situation is changing sharply, and there is a gap between the depth and the speed of world transformations and their perception, not only by politicians and business circles, but the majority of scientists. People don't understand what's going on. They just can see what's going on the surface and the crisis, but they don't understand what's going on. and there is a change of civilization cycles. So we have analyzed 8 genotypes of civilizations in BRICS countries, and we have pointed out not only BRICS countries, we took the rising 12 nations and just lowering or going down states. We took Buddhism, and we have added oceanic civilizations, so 4 civilizations, and Japanese ones, downgrading ones, and this is the major watershed. And this approach makes it possible to think the shifts that have taken now, because without that depth of understanding, because the year 2014 will become in the history the year of historical gap or fault. So the first step for the summit preparation, I'm happy to say thanks to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia, and again we have Oleg Lukov is there and Sergei Alexandrovich is there, so we're very Sergei Ivanov, we're very grateful to those people. Yes, he is here, so you will follow up the Foreign Affairs Ministry of Foreign Affairs efforts, and now we're going to hold a few events in the early December. The meeting with Viktor Sadovnichiy, based in the Fundamental Library of the Moscow State University, to hold the 9th Forum of Civilizations, the same name as today. So there will not only be the report, but 6 sections, including the youngsters session, represented by Roman, that has organized the meeting between Mr. Putin and the youngsters last time. And BRICS is very active in this regard. So second stage will be like this. The third one is going to be next April or May in Yalta. And this BRICS academic forum. So the scientific base is very wide, but it's very important that we have a business council of BRICS. Alexei Nikolaevich is head of that council, and we're now we're holding negotiations with him. He is very active, and he's ready to participate, to consolidate the business elite, and Viktor Konstantinovich Glukhich is the head of International Congress of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs. I've met with him recently. So we need to separate substantial and secondary things. So to distinguish between corporations who work not for the we need to have youngsters on board. We have to have several meetings with the young people, and the change of generation is taking place now. The generation of politicians, businessmen, scientists that prevail today were born in the 90s or 80s. But since the 20s, the next generation will come over, so that generation will take strategic decisions in the 30s. It is, unfortunately, it got a bad education, because education is only failed, is one age, 1 century behind, and we need to be more progressive. And Sergei Lavrov has made a foreword for our textbook. The essence of BRICS ideas is the dialogue between civilizations and partnerships. So we're different, but we're equal, and we cooperate and we resolve main issues together. So recently, we have made the same thing in the Moscow University and Kazan University, the presentation of that textbook. We need to go more often to new generations, and Pavel Valentinovich, we should not only issue that report, but we need to make a digital copy, an online version of that report, and an action plan is coming over for the preparation at the state level. So I think Sergei Alexandrovich will provide more information on what is being done from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because there is a Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Sherpa Lukan is doing the same, and with his team. So I would happy for you, Sergei, say a few words about this from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Sergei Alexandrovich, the floor is yours, please. Please get the microphone. Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. Vadim Borisovich should have done this, should have been present here, but he was not able. He has a tight schedule. But Vadim had been dealing with G8, then G7, G20, a huge share of work, and BRICS. So this meeting is dedicated to the new capital scientific work from the science community, and it's my pleasure to have it in 2 weeks' time. We will be closely watching it, and we're going to prepare. And lots of work has been done for BRICS, but as far as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we coordinate things, and I deal with BRICS as well. So I would say that Sergei Rybkov is a Sherpa, and we co-Sherpa is Vadim Bykov, and there's some other activities related to the presidential summit preparation. We also provide assistance to the summit of the ministers of foreign affairs, and the coordination function is not very good thing, I would say, to do, because we have lots of innovations, I would say, because it takes lots of effort, and then cooperation moves forward, and we're having the statistical department, which is doing a good job, the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health. The healthcare ministers are going to start soon, so we're working on this. Thank you. So maybe we will give an opportunity for the guests to ask questions. Oh, yes, please. I think that BRICS is an imperative of the mindset changing, apart from what has been said today. And in this regard, I would canalize our talk to the practical point, because I was amazed by the fact that how the meeting of G20, how it was covered in the press, not in the West, but in this country. I will mention Vedomost newspaper from yesterday. Those guys were writing that G20 showed that Russia faced with the international community, collided with international community. So if you think that it's only the United States is the world community, international community, Germany, France, Europe, Italy, and so on, I'm sorry, but it means that you don't know geography well from the secondary school. The second point is that why our television, and we have to be learn lessons from that. Nothing has been said on television that Argentina was there, that Mexico was there, to say nothing about China, India, South Africa. No other comment has been made about this. Everything was focused on Obama, on Putin, of course, on Merkel. I beg your pardon. This is a full deviation from the real picture of the world. I am very much worried about, I'm full of indignation how these events are covered by our mass media. Please go ahead with your questions. Thank you to you all for a very integrated speech. I've got a question to Yuri Vladimirovich. In the beginning, you have mentioned the values. Yes, in the mid-20th century, the collective West became postmodern, or for me is counter-modern, because the West is actually made a union with Islamists, with fascists in Ukraine and so on. But the West, after the second half of the 20th century, went away from the values that made it a role model to nowhere. So we can see two things: financial fraud and sexual pathology. This is two things that I can see. So the values in the BRICS is Russia is offering, enlightened conservatism. What is the case in other BRICS nations? Do you agree with such Russian position or not? And the second point is that is BRICS ready to offer an international mobilization project to other nations in the world? Thank you very much. Yes, first of all, I want to say that the value disintegration process is true for the Western civilization. It got disintegrated to several pieces. If you take a look on how it was covered, it was 50 years ago by Peter M. Sorokin in detail. So you just we can wonder now how deep he was looking at that value disintegration process. And what you can see now is the society that it's away his future, that is losing its values. And what is being done in France now with same-sex marriage, in Norway with juvenile justice, this is all, losses when it's just parent one, parent two, no mother and father. So everything is lost. It's being lost for what has been accumulated for dozens of thousands of years of our civilization. But the system of values should be in the center. So I think that BRICS point of view is we're now opposing it. We have the deepest system of values, because you understand that China has its own system, India own system, South Africa its system, and Brazil and Russia, of course. We're having our system, which is very multifaceted. And what is happening now, I think that our system and BRICS countries, this is a cultural system on the one side, but the civilizational tourism is another thing which help youngsters to understand the specifics, because BRICS $95 billion are negative balance for tourism, 50 in China and 30 billion in Russia, 19 billion for Brazil, which is growing new generation. And you can remember, that was the last question to Putin recently, the system of values. This is the core of civilization. If we will not be able to retain this value system, it's going to be a decay of the society, like as a civilization. So I think BRICS is a bulwark for retention of these values, because now there is a big drain of values on TV that we can watch today, and it's gonna be the same values are pressed forward by the West, and we have a good opportunity now as far as civilizations are concerned. So the world leaders are there, and we have to bring our opinion to the new generations in a more efficient way. So I think it's a good field for work. I want to follow up on that thing. The last 20 years, we have been told that the modernization is only possible through westernization, and in Russia we can hear it everywhere. But China and India would show that successful modernization is also possible while retention of the cultural values. So I think that today the model for the developing world is modernization eastward. Westernization is over, and Pax Americana as well. The second point, which we mentioned in our recommended practice, you were right that the Washington consensus is over now. It brought lots of trouble to the developing countries. So many countries, developing countries, are now disintegrated in the Middle East, in the ex-Soviet space. So it's time for BRICS to have a BRICS consensus for the future. For the future 2 years, for the coming 20 years, BRICS has to shape this for the developing world. This BRICS consensus should be very attractive, because this is soft force, soft power. This is non-interference in internal affairs, which is demonstrated by China, not domination with their lifestyle and so on. Please, your question. Victoria Lazic, the Women and Politics magazine. Let Mr. Davidov decide who is going to speak. The first question: are there any priorities among BRICS nations, a fight for a human being, I mean medicine, because we have lots of experience in China and India that will give us a possibility to have a single program to revive a new level of medicine, a new generation of medicine, because the Russian Academy of Sciences are fighting for a new program, the cell renewal, but it's not a big success today. So what do you think? And is it possible to make this program as a single one, to make a point between BRICS, countries, not to go to Israel or Germany, and to go to have those BRICS countries as a single medicine center? And the second point: is there going to be a SWIFT system which will have all those, clearance system for payments, to stay away from dollar? Okay, I'm going to speak to answer the first question. Your idea is nice. We have analyzed the socio-demography state, and we have confirmed everything with the figures. The first thing is we took World Bank, because World Bank, of course, has no sympathy for BRICS. And I would say that there is a big gap between BRICS countries in terms of healthcare budget per capita. By factor 10 or even more, we're lagging behind from the world level. And I'm not going to say that we have to be at the same level of developed countries. They have monopolies. They have inflation for pharmaceutical products prices. They have bigger prices, but which is embezzlement. We don't need it, but I think our partnership and our strategy of partnership should be realized in certain programs. And what you say is not just the social program; it is a technology program that has been done in this country, and we have made a certain retooling of our industry, and we need to help, because the India is having a grave situation in Africa, and in Brazil as well. In some Chinese provinces as well. So in eastern part of China, a big gap between east and west of China, and this program has to be delivered. The first agreement has been signed with Brazil in innovation industries area cooperation, and this innovation cooperation should be done along different lines. So what you do is the first priority, because due to the elderly population, it goes it brings about depopulation. China is going to have the same thing, and the UN demographers said that all BRICS countries by the end of the century will have a great depopulation. So, but we are going to oppose their approach. There is a threat like this, but there is a growth in the United States. The same is true for the UK and Northern Europe, but all BRICS countries should go down in terms of populations. I don't think it's good, and this approach leaves much to be desired. Sorry, this approach is no good, and we need to make this one of priorities, and that will be understood by the people not only in our countries, but we have to influence other nations as well to seek support from those 5 billion countries of BRICS. I can answer your second question. Thank you for this question. It's very important to ensure the financial independence that has been based on the electronic payments and settlements. I would say that Russia is having one of the best automated systems for the Central Bank of Russia by the experts from the Russian Academy of Sciences. We were awarded the state prize for that. It has been in operation for more than 10 years. It has been, fine-tuned, and it is based on the standard solutions similar to the military applications. 3 independent data processing centers, and the system will only be ineffective when all those 3 centers are no more existing. There are 200 people dealing with information security. It's one of the best in the world in terms of info security and redundancy and fail-safety. And that system could also be offered to other nations like Brazil. This is not easy, but there are many things that we have already touched, put out fillers, and we feel very confident on this. Please, other questions. Galia Ibragimov, Russia Beyond the Headlines, the international editorial office from the Rossiyskaya Gazeta. The question is, you have a scientific report, but do you think that BRICS countries will become the very powerful force by the year 2050? But if we can predict that there will be the change of leaders in the West, and if the West suddenly would understand that it's better to be friends with BRICS, does your model allow this, that cooperation with the new West is possible? Who has reconsidered its position in the world? There will be 2 summits, BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organizations. How you consider this cooperation between SCA, BRICS, Eurasian Union? So what do you think about this? Well, not by the year 2050, by 2020, the existing leaders will leave their positions. There is a book published by Arthur Schlesinger Jr., The Cycles of American History. The group of American political scientists, they wrote how it influences the American policy. So they have analyzed this, and they have analyzed this American history cycles, and every 30 years there is a new cycle, back and forth, up and down. And I would say that the Americans cannot be judged just from one side only. There is a hotspot burning there as well, and of rage. hotspot of rage. And there is a new generation coming to the stage. Anti-globalism, Occupy Wall Street movement also took place there. So the new generation is not happy with the results and outcomes with the modern leaders, which are leading the United States from one loss to another loss. So everyone understands that Libya, Afghanistan, and Iraq, especially what is being done in the north of Iraq now, and in Syria, this is the failure of their policy, and I think that there's going to be a swift change of their approach. And there is another book by Paul Kennedy, published 15 years ago, The Rise and Fall of the Empire. He has analyzed those falls and rise of empires for 500 years, and he made a conclusion that every big empire assumes a big number of external obligations and dies under that burden of obligations. So now the United States is in the same condition due to that, according to that Paul Kennedy's methodology. So yes, we have really discovered many scenarios, but the best scenario is that you have mentioned, which is about convergence. So if Western leaders would meet halfway the developing world in the avant-garde, led by BRICS nations, and choose a convergence development strategy, this is the best possible scenario for the world momentum and development. So everybody will flourish, like 25-year flourishing after World War II, from 1948 to 1973. So that the similar age is ahead of us if Western leaders will meet us halfway and hand by hand with the developing countries and BRICS nations, shape the global demand. The demand issue is the biggest problem today for the world economy, because the debt demand is over. We need to shape the real Keynes demand for the world economy and national economies to be shaped. So if BRICS is going to act as an avant-garde of the West and of developing world, will do that convergent demand. This is the best option possible, and the next 25 years are going to be the flourishing 25 years after World War II. So we can see that as far as geopolitics is concerned, the probability of this scenario is very low, because we can see now that the West today is not capable of global and just governance, because after World War II, this is rightly so, the West had been doing that global governance on a very justice foundation. And there is a book by the Nobel Prize winner Michael Spence from the United States of America. He's writing a book, The Future in Convergence, and he has mentioned this in his book in a good way. But we can see now that the West today is, as has been rightly mentioned by Yuri Vasilovich, the West is going in the other direction, and the probability of this good cooperation and convergence is very low, and it's going to be there will be a very fierce fight for leadership, and there will be a breathtaking struggle for the world leadership between the United States and China in the coming 25 years, with the evidence, domination by China. Do you expect new members to come to BRICS countries from Africa, from Asia, and Iran and Turkey are ready to cooperate on several issues offered by BRICS? And there is another point: the possibility to work with the Islamic Bank of Development. What do you think about this? Didn't quite get your question, but as far as I understood, you have mentioned Latin America, so I will try to answer your question. This question has not been touched upon, but basically, in our book, we have Vyacheslav Bobrovnikov, who has advocating this point. BRICS is not just a thing in itself. Every BRICS nation is a leader in terms of in a certain integration association with many countries, and as far as the BRICS potential is concerned, as far as the BRICS impact on the world economy, situation and climate, it is important to consider, as Alexander Bobrovnikov has mentioned, the union of unions. At the latest sessions in Brazil, among think tanks that I have participated, I tried to foster that definition. It was met. It was welcomed by other BRICS experts. And I would say that it's better to say not to hurry up with the BRICS expansion, because the BRICS model is not mature yet. We need to adapt or to try this mechanism first, and then to get to the new stage. But as long as it is not the case, we need to deliver that advantage, the union of unions. The second thing of the problem is that it has already begun. Since the Durban summit, there is a program, the so-called outreach program has been underway. When BRICS leaders meet the corresponding regional leaders, which took place first in Africa when South Africa held the summit. The second time it happened in the Brazilian summit, when BRICS leaders met nearby South America leaders. And if you look through that union of unions definition, you can look at the world map. You can see that the areas that tend to BRICS are more special than those who tend to G7. This is my response to your question, if possible. You're quite right. Please, other questions. Alexander Zakharov, Presidential Club of Trust. Question to Alexander Ivanovich. At the last BRICS summit, there was one of the major topics that have been proclaimed is the aspiration for the independence in the financial, credit and currency spheres. What is the role of the BRICS Development Bank to achieve this goal, and how BRICS countries are going to achieve this goal of full independence or partial independence from the major financial centers of the world, and this dependency from the major traded currencies, euro or dollar. And is there a plan in the BRICS countries to have a joint currency, or to be limited by their currencies, or to establish a new currency as an opposition to euro or dollar? Thank you. It's a very delicate and difficult question, I would say. The BRICS Bank will not be able to make an alternative, because if you take into account 3.3 trillion Chinese investment in the American bonds, and the Russian share is also big, you can see that one reserve currency is dominating, but it dominates not just because of it is so good, but there is a certain share of the United States in the economy, and there is a certain correlation. Of course, this correlation is maybe too big, but I would say that the second point is that the independence scenario does not mean that we need to separate and set up a certain BRICS archipelago, we don't play games. It's not like, it shouldn't be done like this, because those new countries, new BRICS scenario means harmonization of all civilizations to the global extent, and the BRICS question, if we go too far, it turns out that the majority of banking and financial organizations are based on the Russian mathematicians, English, German, and other scientists, and it's very interrelated. And if we try to have a political decision like this based on a geopolitical decision, it's not very good. It's not, but independence means stability. We should not be dependent in our development on somebody closes the channels, the credit cards, and that mechanism, or somebody would cancel clearing accounts or something, or settlements. So BRICS countries are trying to align these settlement things between ourselves. Sometimes it's not good to use their national currency, because, of course, you can make settlements in rubles, but if ruble is correlated with the dollar, it's not going to be good. So the countries are based on what is good for them, what is better in terms of transactions and profits. So that BRICS share will increase, and it will increase the significance of the international monetary organizations like the IMF votes, so we have a bigger presence in the IMF, and that will also have its consequences. But this way should be very cautious. We should not make issues for ourselves. I would add that the Fortaleza Declaration says that the BRICS bank has been delivered through the interbanking cooperation. It depends on which function will the bank perform. If you if you notice, the banks have stopped performing their roles. They are now just exchange points, but they should support innovation projects. And investments without innovations make no sense, I would say. And they're even hazardous in terms of further manufacturing. So we hope that our Vneshekonombank VEB is doing this, and it is going to have its branch office in Shanghai, and those guys will really start delivering those strategic programs like healthcare that you have mentioned, security, and so on. And that would be very nice if the BRICS Bank will have it's among its priorities to make a contest of new innovators. So after the BRICS summit, to have a Black Sea cruise voyage, and to select several hundreds of youngsters, and to have a competition of young projects, innovation projects, and to make a league of young innovators in the BRICS, among BRICS countries. And that would be very nice if we stay away from that tradition of the bank would stay away from just the profit-making institution to switch to the bank as the center of innovative breakthrough. Your question is key, and I would say that Russia is now facing a problem of long-term money. We don't have enough financial resources. we have lost billions of dollars because of the poor structure of our gold reserves. But we need to understand that we suffocate in our development. No matter which bank will do it, BRICS Bank or the others, they could be the sources of longer-term investment resources, and it doesn't mean that it should be just a trade currency. But we have only 2 minutes for the last question, please. Again, thank you. I didn't get the full answer to my last question related to the fact that what BRICS could offer in terms of ideology. Why am I asking this question again? Because we're now having a fight between two strategies, BRICS and the world of capitalism. But capitalism is an ideology. It's like, it's just one ideology. What BRICS could offer as a new model, as a new formation to the world in terms of socio-economic thing, based on the justice criteria, what could BRICS offer in this regard? Yeah, thank you. What is happening now, as far as the historical gap is concerned, the first 25 years of the 21st century is the sundusk of those civilizations that got emerged 225 years ago. It was a civilization based on the man-made machine leadership and exploitation of natural resources, and turning a human being into an accessory of the machine. So it is now squeezed to the maximum, but now there is another civilization which exists. Peter Sorokin has mentioned it as integral civilization. It changes all those socio-demographic approach and the attitude towards the nature that Vernadsky and Moiseev practiced. It changes the technology and innovation breakthroughs. It changes the economics and economics bubble age, and it's no coincidence that China and other countries are trying to change this virtual economy after 2007, but the gap is becoming even bigger. They have very, very slow rising economy. And the social cultural sphere, so this theory is good. I mean, you have mentioned this value system in the beginning. The Brand BRICS offers the integral system of values for integral civilizations. So what was the dream of Peter Sorokin and many other representatives from the Russian and the world science? So I think that BRICS is offering a model of the future growth, not an academic one, but a real model, which could be practically delivered. It is deployed in China in one way, in Vietnam in the other way, in Austria or Sweden, but the world is going in that direction. The domination period of multinationals is coming to an end, that are out of control and are trying to make a profit, an extra profit from everything. This is becoming obsolete now, and it makes no sense today. And the faster we stay away from this arms race which is taking place in the United States is very dangerous. And we were fighting against nuclear weapons in the 70s. We need to fight against this new wave of militarism that is taking place there. So now there is a point when we have to choose the strategy, the future, and what is taking place in terms of generation change. We need. I have to say that in the coming 5 years, we will see how will the leadership structure take place, and the crisis is very good, learns a very good lesson to us. So now we're having a gap, and people begin to understand that this is a useless way. We need to have new approaches, and these new approaches are vested in the BRICS countries, and they do it. And I would say I'm very optimistic about the future, and from the viewpoint of that cyclic change. This is no coincidence that the Greek civilization fell. It was the same. When the Roman civilization fell down, it was the same thing. But the the mankind is coming to new vistas, and I'm very optimistic, and I urge you to be optimistic. Thank you very much. Well, colleagues, 1 minute, please. Yes, please. Dear colleagues, you know that 7 days ago the scientific community of Russia has celebrated the 70th anniversary of Oskar Akayev, and probably you had a chance to watch a film on his life on TV. And Oskar Akayevich has printed a new monography about global modeling, and many people dream of getting a copy of that book. You got it, Oskar Akayevich. And we see that he is full of power, and I think it would be right to wish him well. And your activities is very positive for our country, and I've got a instruction from Ruslan Koshkin, president of research of our institute, to give this honorable letter from that institute to Oskar Akayevich. Yes, it was a very nice celebration, and it was a big unity between the scientific people and between the other people. So, a man from the future. So it's about him. He is the man from the future, and he is our role model for the youngsters. So thank you very much. My pleasure to congratulate you on that occasion. Vladimir Mikhailovich, you wanted to add? Yes, very shortly. First of all, I would like to say the same. My compliments to Oskar Akayevich, but he is misleading us. He is not 50. Sorry, he is not 70. He is 50, not more. This is the first point. The second point is that, yes, I think as a 30-year-old man, right, and I don't mention other things. No. I want to mention your question. We shouldn't hope for a single ideology. We began talking about the fact that we have 5 civilization areas, 5 powerful, longer historical civilizations. We will not be able to work out a single mindset if we can move only towards we can only make a narrowing of our systems of values. We should only move along the way of more mutual understanding, but it takes a lot of work. We're not yet regarded as parts of our world, our planet, which has historically long retrospective of communication and interaction. Why the European Union came into being? Because before that time, there were hundreds of years of intensive communication. The joint European market was established not because of the fact that the European Union came into being, but because of the fact that de facto it was at the level of entities. It got shaped a long time ago. So it was just the conclusion of the fact. The same thing is taking place not only in the economic area, but in the socio-cultural area. But they might be more inert in the social cultural area. So we need to have a lot of work that will lead us to the appearance of the joint platform, the joint mentality and understanding of what is going on in today's world. And what has been mentioned by Oskar Akayevich, that we sincerely congratulate on the occasion. I liked his formula. This is a certain consensus. BRICS is a consensus. So we need to be based on the sense of that word, on that definition. So I urge you to listen more attentively to what Oskar Akayevich is saying. Thank you very much. Allow me to say thank you to our guests for that successful work, for that report, for an interesting press conference, and thank you very much for your cooperation. Until next time. And Pavel Valentinovich, who has assumed